Hey guys, welcome back to All Roads a River, our
Welcome.
week 2 of 100 Days of Dante. Here with Cantos 8 to 14 coming at you live. Well, not live, but live and in person. Um,
This is where it gets crazy.
yeah, this is where it does get crazy.
A lot more violent than the first seven,
A
but
lot more violence.
very,
Yes.
very excited to get into it. So
Yeah. And we're going to take a look at Dis, not Dis as in like the modern slang term, but Dis as in the city of hell. Take a look at Dis and, yeah, get through the people who are violent towards themselves or to God or whomever, and should be pretty interesting. So,
yes, and the heretics too.
and the heretics.
That part gets
Yes,
a little crazy. So
and that is actually where we are going to start. Well, we're not really. We're not going to start there. We're going to start with this and Canto 8. Canto 8. Let's just jump right into it. How about that?
yes, sir.
What were your thoughts on Canto 8, Worth?
Let's see. I thought it was interesting. Flegius, I think is how you say his name.
Mm-hmm.
The guard of the was it the fifth circle?
Oh gosh, I don't remember.
But anyways, the first violent circle. I just think it's interesting, like how all the guards of the circles are really excited to take in new souls.
Yeah.
Like that's their only form of joy,
Mhm.
basically, is tormenting souls. But Virgil is saying like, nope, you're not gonna be able to get this one. He's still alive, and then they keep him at bay. So I thought that was interesting.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah. So in Canto 7, dear viewers, if you are not following along in the book, we've gone through the first 4 circles of hell, or 5th circle. 4.
let's see.
I think the first 5. We've gone through the
I
first
think
5
yeah, I think it
circles.
was 5.
Yes, because 5 is going to be the gluttonous.
Yeah,
right.
It was
Okay.
5. It was 5.
Or no, the irascible and the sullen. Sorry, gluttonous was a while ago. The irascible and the sullen were circle 5. We are now approaching the city of Dis, which is this big fortification in hell, surrounded by the river Styx, which makes up its moat. So we're going into like the deep part of the underworld here. And in Roman mythology, Dis Pater is the ruler of the underworld. That's his name, like Father Dis, analogous to Satan. And just for some background, in the Aeneid, which is Virgil's work, in the 6th book of the Aeneid, Aeneas enters Dis, and in that book, in the Divine Comedy, outside of this, what we've had before are sins of self-indulgence, and what's going to happen after are sins of the wrathful. People who are violent, people who are fraudulent, betrayers, heretics. Not in that order.
Right.
Yeah. But Virgil comes up and they want to take Dante. Doesn't let him take Dante, but Virgil's not able to get them into the city of Dis. He's not able to break their fortifications.
Right.
Not in Canto 8, at least. We're going to see what happens after.
Yes, not yet.
Mm-hmm.
I also liked the part with the one who weeps in Canto 8.
Yes.
And how he's pitying the great kings of Earth who are really full of themselves,
Mm-hmm.
and how he knows that as he was, great on Earth, there's nothing in the afterlife for them if they don't have God and reject God and are violent. So
yeah, I think we covered it a little bit last time, where the only hope for those in hell is fame on Earth,
right,
and they'll never know. If
yeah, and even that doesn't
Mm-hmm.
matter. So
yeah, pretty much, kind of sad existence.
Yes, very much so.
Anything more about 8, or shall we move to 9?
The mosques.
Oh yes,
Yes. So the city of Dis, the main city of hell that we were just talking about, it is described as having its turrets, I guess, or its towers as mosques, which might be a little jab at Islam that Dante
Mm-hmm.
makes. So
yeah,
I thought that was really interesting.
not just theologically, but for the time period.
Right. Yeah.
Constantinople is going to fall in the next century.
Yes.
So the wars with the Turks are definitely still going on. The Crusades are still pretty fresh, kind of like how the Civil War to now is kind of how like the Crusades were to Dante.
Yeah.
A little bit, maybe a little bit longer, but still kind of fresh in everybody's mind.
Similar time period though.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. I think that's all I've got for Canto 8.
Let's go to Canto 9, where an angel shows up and opens the gate in a very dramatic fashion.
Yes.
And the angel descends into hell and opens the gate of Dis for them.
That was pretty sweet. And I no spirit in hell could stop that angel that came. And nothing can stop God's providences. I think.
Yeah.
What it was saying there. I'm a sucker for Greek mythology. And this book is full of it. But I really liked how the Furies came.
Yes.
And we're about to, I think, show Medusa's head to Dante. And I thought it was interesting how Medusa's powers still work
Mm.
on Dante, and
Oh,
how
that is
like
interesting.
even though she's a soul, her her gargoyle
Yeah.
ridden head still works on Dante. So I
Huh.
thought that was pretty interesting. But
Of course, it doesn't actually. It would work on Dante had not Virgil intervened.
right, yes, yeah,
Saved our boy again.
yeah, he's so clutch. I mean, especially for a guy who's in limbo. I mean,
Hmm.
wish he would get another chance.
Yeah.
But
He's slightly based.
he is.
Uh, but yeah, the Furies, those who torment the punished with madness. So which is kind of funny because so right outside Dis are the irascible, and then inside are the heretics. So kind of people who are both kind of different kinds of madness, madness of like anger, madness of heresy.
Yes, yeah.
So very interesting stuff.
And it's interesting how um, the ones who are lying are the ones who are inside this.
Mm.
Like how Dante categorizes heresy as worse than irascibility. Or
Yeah, and
anger.
even those
So,
like the very first circle had all the philosophers and the people who kind of sought for light but they didn't reach God, didn't understand that part of it,
right.
and but they even though they wrote things that like in Christian circles would be considered heresy, like of course Aristotle and Socrates and Plato weren't Christian philosophers by any means, but they wrote I guess wasn't counted as heresy because it wasn't within Christendom, I guess.
Right. Yeah.
But those who are within Christendom and commit probably less, you would say, just cumulatively less theological errors than maybe Aristotle or
right.
Plato did.
They
Like
know better.
they're further off, but in Dante's Inferno, they know better than the heretics because the heretics were the ultimate sin because they knew and denied what they knew.
Exactly. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Which is a pretty stark reminder for us.
Definitely. Yeah, we're definitely held to a higher standard when we know the word.
So. Yeah, it's like Luke 12:44. Too much is given, much is required.
Yes. Yep. And also the
Could be
idea.
the wrong verse.
I forget what chapter it's from, but Paul is talking about how the Christian teachers, are held to a higher standard of behavior.
No, it's James. It's James chapter 3.
Yep. Yep.
Beginning of James chapter 3.
And also in a lot of epistles, it talks about how the early church fathers are supposed to be very virtuous and
all the instructions for deacons
families,
and stuff.
right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So,
yeah. Let's keep on trucking. Canto 10.
Canto 10. Yep.
Now we are at the heretics. There is a cemetery. So it's like the mentions like you go into the city of Dis, and now we're just in this huge cemetery of the tombs are in the ground. And they're heretics. They're tombs of heretics. And there's a really good stanza here that I wrote down. The cemetery have upon this side, with Epicurus all his followers, who with the body mortal make the soul. And very interesting, that last line especially, who with the body mortal make the soul. I'm kind of wondering where the clauses are in that. Like, who with the body mortal make the soul, or who with the body mortal make the soul? I think it's like that, like comma after body, kind of. Who with the body mortal make the soul.
Yeah,
make the soul
because
mortal.
like the Epicureans, if I'm right, they didn't believe in the afterlife.
No, they were, yeah.
They kind of get what they ask for, because like they're
they're dead. They're the only ones who are dead in hell.
Exactly. Like they don't believe that there's life after death, so they don't get life after death.
Yeah,
it's kind of funny. I
actually didn't think about that. That's really good.
Yeah, so like in their earthly lives, with their own bodies, with their minds, they end up killing their souls with their beliefs, which is pretty. That's what I love.
But like their death isn't. I mean, of course, because they're still alive in their tombs. Like some of them are going to rise.
Right.
They're still alive in their tombs. They're not dead, but they're dead in the sense that they can't wander around hell or they can't talk with anybody else.
Yeah.
That's kind of like that's a really rough hell.
Yes, because I mean, I think most humans are worse in isolation.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, what we'll get to later is pretty brutal too, but I don't know. That's just complete isolation would be a rough punishment. So
it's also interesting that the Epicureans are here when the Epicureans weren't Christian heretics. They're like Aristotle and Plato in the same sense that they didn't have the revelation of Jesus. But here they're judged differently than them, than Aristotle and Plato were. Maybe because their philosophies were closer to what Christianity was.
Right. Is that what you think?
That's what I think. Or it could be that these are like Christian Epicureans. I don't know. I'd probably say no. They're probably pagan Epicureans.
Yeah. Maybe it's because Dante thinks the denial of the soul is such a grave sin. Because I think even Aristotle and Plato, I can't remember which one, but they believe that they believed in a soul of some kind.
Yeah, so they're kind of separated like that. Maybe it's that specific part of their philosophy that kind of separates their heresy.
Yeah,
That's
interesting
stuff.
to-
Kind of interesting thing about.
to theorize. Yeah.
Yeah, the Epicureans. Yeah, very interesting.
Oh, and then
They
you
appear in the Bible in Acts 17.
Really?
Yeah, when
That's
Paul
right.
is in Areopagus, the Areopagus address.
Is that to the unknown God?
Yeah, so the
Okay,
undergod,
yep.
it's like the gathering of Epicureans and Stoics, who are the total opposite of Epicureans. Because
Right.
Stoicism is kind of based, and Epicureanism is definitely not based.
No.
Yeah, Epicureans put pleasure as the highest goal in life. And here we get Farinata,
Yes.
who's Dante's political enemy, and also an Epicurean.
Yes.
Which might be why Dante put them with the heretics,
Right.
because he really doesn't like this guy.
No, he doesn't, but he respects him still.
Yeah,
which is really
he
interesting.
still respects him.
Um,
Talking about the black and white Guelph split.
yes,
In
and
the scene.
for a refresher, the white Guelphs are the anti-papists, correct? And then
Yes, white Guelphs are anti, black
black
Guelphs
Guelphs
are
are
pro-papist.
papists. And Dante was a white Guelph, and
Anti-papist. Got
Yes.
kicked out of Florence for it.
right.
Mhm.
Then Farinata was a black
Black Guelph.
Guelph.
Yep.
Yeah. So still getting them right in my head. Sorry. And I just think it's funny how Dante puts one of his biggest theological rivals in one of the deepest circles of hell.
Yeah.
Just like
kind of slights him like that.
and was Farinata dead at this point?
I think so. I
Okay.
think he was dead at this point, yeah.
Imagine if he was alive though.
Bro,
How
imagine
crazy that would have been.
Wow, imagine if he was alive when the comedy came out and he finds himself in hell. Like,
Yeah. Like, come on, man. Like, it's not
that's
that
like
deep.
that'd be like the biggest. That's like the biggest diss track.
Yes.
Is
Yeah.
that your bro writes 100 cantos of like an epic poem. Like he wrote the epic poem of the medieval era, and you're in hell in it. Like that's gonna suck.
And
Like
you're-
Kendrick and Drake, like that's like nothing.
No,
compared to
yeah,
this.
absolutely not. And we're remembering this 600 years later.
Yeah,
We're talking about this guy who was actually real on Earth. Yeah, that's hilarious to think. Not that funny because he's
yeah, because he might
Deep in
actually
hell.
be in hell.
yeah, but it's definitely ironic on some level. So
Mhm.
that's all I have for Canto 10. Do you have
Yeah, me
anything else
too.
to add?
Let's hit 11. Second part of the heresy things, and before we get into the violent. Yeah, and here we get the next heretic, or the last heretic of the bunch, which is Pope Anastasius. Pope
Yes.
Anastasius. Why was he a heretic?
I don't know. I didn't research this. The thing that I wrote down though is like, imagine in a Catholic, like you being in a Catholic country and you write about a pope who's in one of the worst parts of hell. Just the implications that has. I mean, we can see why Dante got kicked out of Florence.
Yeah. Well, I wonder if he was one of the heretic popes. That'd be my first thought. I didn't.
Yeah.
This is the one thing I actually forgot to go back and look up. So sorry for my negligence on this part. Sorry for sliding you like that.
Yes, apologies.
But you can go look up for yourself and do a little research why Pope Anastasius is in hell. At least according to Dante.
Yes.
But yeah, dang. Okay.
That
I wrote down why was he a heretic, and I didn't actually just go and research it.
Yeah.
So I guess this. Oh yeah, because this was before I left for the weekend. So
We apologize. We have actual lives outside.
yeah,
of the
sometimes we
channel.
do forget about things. We write stuff down and we forget about we are not perfect.
Yeah, but we have all fallen short.
Of the glory of God.
This is one of those instances. So
Yes.
apologies
Forgive us.
once again.
Maybe I'll have like a little like asterisk. He was actually this dude. So yes, I'll put in some extra info.
Yes, right up here. I'm just kidding. I don't know how the editing actually works. But yeah. All right.
Okay.
That's the main idea for 11,
Yeah.
right.
Then we get the preview of the final circles, which, big deal. We'll get through them anyway. Basically, violent, frauders, and betrayers unto death are our next three circles. 7, 8, 9.
I love how betrayers are in the worst
Yeah.
circle.
And we're going to find out what betrayers are in the worst circle.
Yes.
That's really interesting. I already got this spoiled by my professor, but it's really interesting when you find out who's there.
Yes. Watch the next video for that.
Yeah,
by
watch the
way.
next video
Be
to
sure to
find
tune in.
out who is at the bottom of hell. And it is not Farinata nor Pope Anastasius.
Right. No matter how much Dante hated him.
Yep.
You couldn't put him at the bottom. So.
Nor people who put pineapple on pizza.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
To all of our brothers and sisters in Christ who do that, why? Why do you do
Yes, please seek redemption and confession within the church.
that? Yes. Within the one holy Catholic. All right. So yeah, that's the main. Oh, let's see. I did like one of the poetic moments in Canto 12. Let's see. Yeah. It's line 88, and Virgil is talking about how to Chiron about God's providence in bringing Dante to hell, and he says, "Someone withdrew from singing Hallelujah, who unto me committed this new office. No thief is he, nor I a thievish spirit." I just thought that was cool, describing how Beatrice like stopped her praising in unity with God in
Yeah.
heaven to because she cared about Dante so much, to inspire Virgil to take him on this journey. So I thought that was pretty cool.
That was good. That was a good part of it.
But yeah, it's also Alexander the Great being in.
Yeah, he was down there. That's right.
Being in that circle. And funny how a Greek god is in the circle too, Dionysus.
Yeah, Dionysus. Dionysus and Alexander.
And then Attila the Hun. All I can think of is Night at the Museum. When Attila the Hun's just going crazy. But yeah, that's all I have for the Canto.
All right, I'm going to move on to 12. We're on 12 now.
Yeah, you're right.
So 12 is the first of the 3 violent circles we're going to go through today. And so we get our guard again. And this one is a Minotaur. Right? That's what I got from it. I picked it as Minotaur. Okay.
Minotaur as well.
And he's called the Infamy of Crete. I think he's also called the Duke of Athens. That could be referring to somebody else. It was a very confusing little part. But in this one, I don't think the Minotaur isn't actually guarding it. He's like kind of waylaid by the side of the road. Like there was no combat scene where Virgil had to like get them past, like with Plutus or with Minos or anybody else. So I think this one it was kind of weird how he was off to the side. But then we get centaurs. Centaurs show up, and the guide for this section, Nessus, as they shoot the people in the river who are dying of violence. This one is just general violence, I think.
Yes, and the punishment was violence in return.
Yeah, violence against others because Alexander's here.
Right. Yeah, and
Attila the Hun.
Yeah. So I accidentally mixed up Cantos 11 and 12. The line with Beatrice is in this canto.
Okay.
Yeah. So my bad, y'all. But I also, it was weird for me to see Chiron, the centaur, in such a deep circle of hell because shout out Percy Jackson, but he was basically Percy's mentor at the camp.
Well, they're kind of punishers in this,
like his history teacher.
They're not really like being punished; they're the punishers.
That's true, but I mean, still, it implies that they.
I guess so.
They were I mean, they like to shoot people in rivers of fire.
For the violent or hurting the violent.
But... Yeah. So still, like, he's obviously not a great guy in this. So it was just weird to see him in that position after reading about him in Percy Jackson. But
yeah. Well, there's one poetic moment that I'd like to talk about here, which is this stanza. It says, "O blind cupidity, O wrath insane, that spurs us onward so in our short life, and in the eternal then so badly steeps us." I feel it's really deep. Like, kind of Dante is going through the idea of how much of our lives do we spend being angry, like that spurs us onward so in our short life. So it's like these are the people who have been driven by violence and anger, and then he says the result is, and in the eternal life then so badly steeps us. Like they're so filled with anger, they're steeping over. And he calls it "O blind captivity" and "O wrath insane." Just like kind of the depth of how anger can go all the way to hell.
Yes, and to the deepest parts of it.
And like Paul says, don't let the sun set on your anger.
Yeah. We could have a whole conversation about how you shouldn't go to bed with beef with someone. You sort things out first.
In the words of my wise friend, if you got beef, cook it.
Yes. And eat it, because it tastes pretty good.
And have a meal of fellowship with your friends, with your enemies.
With your brothers and sisters in Christ.
Pray for those who persecute you.
Yes.
Anyway, that's all I have on that one. This one's pretty simple.
Same. Yeah.
All right.
Canto 13.
I only have 2 lines against this because I didn't understand a word of this one. I got people turned into trees and violent against themselves. So suicidal people.
Yes.
Suicides.
And then
I'm going to let you take over for this one, Worth.
Well, it's not like I understood too much either. I thought the pictures were
interesting.
Pretty sweet. I mean, not really that cool to look at because they're so gross, but just the way that Gustave Doré depicted them.
Yeah, really good illustrations.
And it's really funny, though, how Dante and Virgil are just...
They're just
like,
chilling.
If I was looking at them, I'd be like, what is going on? But Virgil just... and Dante's like, it's interesting how this is going on. But yes, there was the main tree that's talking. So basically in this canto, if you don't know, the people who harm themselves are turned into trees, and then their leaves are fed on by harpies, who were basically these bird women from Greek mythology who were vicious, kind of like vulture women, pretty much is what I
Okay.
like to think of them. And they like to feed on their leaves and break apart their limbs, and that basically makes the tree people, feel like they're being dismembered,
Oh,
which is pretty rough, to say the least. And the one that they talk to who's getting dismembered, I don't remember his actual name, but he was the servant of it, the keeper of the keys of
mm,
I think a king named
yes.
Frederick, um, and talks about how he was so dutiful to all the people that he served and waited on, um, and then he was, um, I believe he was framed for something, or he was, she
That's kind of what I was
he
picking up
was
from
put
it.
to shame. He was put to
Yeah.
shame by his like fellow servants, I'm pretty sure, and he was so ashamed of what he did that he took his own life,
Mm.
even though he was a dutiful servant the rest of the time. I thought that was pretty pretty rough, like how you can be faithful, you can do all these good things, but if you decide to end your own life, according to Dante, you get put into the pretty much the worst punishment that you can imagine.
Yeah. It will be interesting to talk about if that's true theologically or not.
Right, like how, I mean, I know obviously suicide is a horrible thing and you
Yeah.
shouldn't do it,
Terrible.
but like how grave of a sin is it,
Hmm.
compared to the others? And I think that's something we can get into in another video, is like the levels of sin, um,
Yeah.
or some sins worse than others.
Yeah. That's kind of like the question is, because Dante, we were talking about this a little bit earlier, is that Dante, by making different circles of hell, doesn't necessarily, that fact doesn't preclude or doesn't mean that therefore there are sins worse than others.
Mm-hmm.
He's just kind of leveled them on different levels. Now you can interpret that as the levels being they get worse as you go down. But if I'm not right, he doesn't make any explicit statements saying that there are certain people who are worse than others. It's just implied by the structure. So you could say that all the circles of hell are equal. They're just differing in punishment and maybe in severity of the crime done, but they're all,
Yes,
none is worse than the other because all the punishments fit the crime.
right, and they're
So
all separate from God. Like
right.
even the philosophers who are in, well, I guess they're not miserable, but there's still a sense of isolation because they're
Mm-hmm.
not with God. Like even Virgil hates that he will never have the chance to
Yeah,
be in heaven.
which means that they're separate from their object of philosophy.
Yes, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
like the light that they're chasing, or the true
Yeah,
form they're
they can't
chasing.
philosophize when there's a world with no God.
Exactly. So they're just chilling in limbo, um, chilling in Kansas.
Yeah, now that me makes sense. Hopefully, after that last week's video,
Yes.
we cooked on that. That was pretty good.
Yeah, that was all Chandler. Check out our Instagram, by the way, to see all of our teasers and pre-video
Yeah, we had a lot of fun with
posts.
those. Also, Google Slide thumbnails.
Clutch. Yeah, we're
It
pretty
came to
low
me in a
budget.
divine
But
vision during campus community when Jonathan Falwell was preaching that first thumbnail.
yes,
Yeah.
that was impressive. You know, I don't want to put the label divinely inspired on our thumbnails, but if that's not, I don't know what it is. No, I'm kidding. But
Anyway, back to the topic at hand. Yeah, a question for another day about whether levels of sin and stuff.
yes,
Very interesting discussion.
Canto
Let's
14.
hop over to the last canto of the day, 14. And
We're almost there, y'all.
Yeah, we're almost through this. Violent against God. So we have violence against others, violence against themselves, violent against God. And we're about halfway through the circle of the violent. We're going to have those violent against nature and violent against art preview for next week. And what I thought was really interesting in this is that, of course, there's people who are violent against God. Like, what is violence against God? Things like idolatry. Things like, I mean, I guess this is a big one. That can kind of sum up everything else. But things like, and the example we're going to get is actual, a person or a character who robbed God or tried to rob God in mythology. People who steal from God what is his. So idolatry, idolatry, desecration.
Maybe blasphemy.
Blasphemy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the picture that Dante gives us is going to be of Capaneus, who is a Greek mythological figure. I think he's Greek. I'm pretty sure. Who stole, I think it's Zeus's thunderbolt, or tried to steal Zeus's lightning. Not like Prometheus, but like Prometheus stole fire from the gods, but in a different way. And then he did something else to another god. It was pretty complicated. I'm not familiar with Greek mythology, so this was like a Google search. And yeah, it was really interesting that Capaneus obviously sinned in his story against Zeus, whoever the god was. who's a false god, right? Of course, Dante does not believe that Zeus is the all-powerful god,
Right.
which is why I thought it was interesting that he put him in here. And maybe think about all the other ones, all the other examples from mythology. Like, why would he put someone who sinned against a false god in here? Because obviously Zeus doesn't exist. Obviously, that's not a real god. He's not the true god. Why would he not include an example of someone who sinned against like the real god if he's kind of giving like a picture of hell?
Right. And there's so many examples.
Yeah, like we
from the
talked
Old
about, like
Testament.
Jeroboam or like Ahab or Jezebel with the Baals.
Yeah, or forgot his name again. Or Lamech.
Lamech, yeah.
Or Achan in the Old
Nimrod.
Testament too.
Nimrod.
Nimrod, yeah. And even in the New Testament.
Yeah.
Well, obviously we'll get to some people later in the next circle.
Mm-hmm.
From the New Testament. But
yeah, well, it was interesting why throughout this book he's been using mythological examples instead of biblical examples.
Right.
I think kind of speaks to the period of the time he was in, but also just, yeah, I wonder why this case more than others struck out against me because the person he sinned against wasn't real. Why is he getting punished for that in Dante's Inferno if he sinned against something that wasn't real?
Right.
It made me wonder why he chose him for the example.
And part of me wonders if Dante obviously wants to convey some of what he thinks is truth in this, but I think he acknowledges that this is fiction and this comes from his own mind, and I wonder if he wanted to sort of underscore that idea that this is fiction by having fictional characters be punished. So like
if it was real people, then
these fictional people, these aren't real people.
Yeah.
Obviously, there are some people in the Bible that we'll get to later that we can say pretty safely are in hell. But maybe he put these fictional characters in there to say, like, this is what I think hell would look like, not what hell actually looks like. Because it's pretty bold to say what people in real life, like where they are in hell.
Pope Anastasius.
Right, yeah, like Pope Anastasius. He isn't afraid to do it with his theological and political enemies. But maybe with other Bible characters, he leaves them out just because maybe it's a conscience thing. But
that's an interesting take. I like that. I like that theory.
Right.
One more topic to talk about, and then we're done for today.
Yes.
Is the weird image of the old man made out of metal buried underneath the mountain. So this idea is like there was an old man in his like gold chest, like, and then like iron legs or something like that with like feet of clay and iron, bronze legs. And there are like fissures in him, not in the gold part, but there are fissures in him. And out of that come tears, and out of those tears form the rivers of the underworld. And he's buried underneath a mountain. So this is like a hugely complex image. What does it mean? What does it mean, Worth?
I honestly don't know. I wrote down the meaning of the rivers, but I really couldn't figure out what that meant. What did you have on there?
I had a few ideas about it. So some ideas, or just generally ideas, being that it's a picture from the book of Daniel, Daniel chapter 2. So there's this guy, the old man, right, with the different metals, gold, bronze, iron, and clay feet. I could be getting that wrong, maybe a little bit off. And he's got the fissures in him, and the tears from those fissures are becoming rivers in the underworld. I just talked about that. And it's a parallel to the Nebuchadnezzar's statue of predicting the empires of the world before Christ is going to come and defeat them in Daniel chapter 2. So it's a mythological river spring. It's a parallel to the statue. And old man is buried beneath a mountain, which I've read something that said it could be Calvary or Purgatory. Like Calvary, where Christ died, of course. Purgatory, where the idea that in Purgatory is going to be Dante ascending a mountain into heaven, where he meets Beatrice and stuff. That the vision he's having of this mountain might not be in hell. It might be removed from hell as the mountain of Purgatory. Also, there's an idea that the old man could be a ubiquitous representation of man, because all the different empires are kind of formed in him. It could be an example of all mankind. And what I thought it is a bit of an Edenic imagery, like Garden of Eden kind of imagery, where there's God's heavenly mountain, which is the picture from Eden we get, with a river flowing out of it that spreads into the four rivers, the Pichon, the Gihon, the Tigris, and the Euphrates. And it could be this kind of equivalent for the underworld, where there's the rivers flowing out.
Like the anti-Eden.
Anti-Eden. Another example could be this idea from the medieval period, which is the Great Chain of Being. I'll put this image up on the screen. But the Great Chain of Being is this idea where there's God at the top and hell at the bottom. Man is within the orders of nature. The orders of nature are stacked in the middle. And the idea being that man can either ascend to God or descend to hell, self-passions, indulgences and anger, things like that Dante's talking about here, or through Christ, man can ascend himself to God. And that's the idea that's going to spark Renaissance humanism, Christian humanism, which is really interesting. And this could be what Dante's trying to get at with the mountain. Is the mountain is this picture of the great chain of being. That is kind of what Purgatory is also a mirror of. Kind of ascending from heaven or from hell to heaven.
Yes.
Yeah, that's just like a 1 minute, 2 minute kind of diagnosis of all the stuff the image could contain. There's probably a lot more you can find online.
Right. It's crazy how not even half a page.
Not even half a page.
That much meaning. That's how good Dante
probably
is.
the deepest image we've gotten yet is in a half a page.
Yeah, I think so too. And then also with that, the 5 rivers of hell that stream from this metal man, I guess. There's the river Leith, which is the river of forgetfulness. Each river has a function. So when someone dips their toes in the Leith, they forget everything that happened to them. Then the river Styx, which is the most famous river, the boundary of hell at the gates, the one that Charon rows the boat across. Then there is the river Plegathon, which is the river of fire, which is really interesting because it is a river that you drink from it and it burns your mouth. It's incredibly painful, but it heals you, which I think is a representation of Purgatory, which I wonder if Plegathon is going to be in the next book.
Could be.
So,
yeah.
That'll be interesting to see. And then the river Acheron is the river of woe and misery. And then the river Coctus is the river of wailing or lamentation. And I wasn't really able to find a distinction. I didn't look as hard as I should have, but find a distinction between the river Acheron and the river Coctus. I'd like to look into that.
Interesting to find out.
I think so too. But all these rivers are rivers of hell, and they're not good rivers, and they do not lead you to God.
But
they're
not roads.
There are many good rivers, many good roads that are inspired by Christ and that have Christ's love, wisdom laced within them that lead to the great wisdom, the great love that is God.
Amen. Wonderful callback. And we shall see all you viewers next time as we discover how all roads are a river that leads us to Christ.
Yes, thank you for watching. We love you guys, and God loves you.
Adios.